One of the saddest tragedies any parent can experience is watching their child die. It's even more painful when the parents know the death could have been avoided if only certain steps had been taken before the fateful day. That kind of avoidable death sums up the tragedy of 38-year-old Rodney Hinton Jr. and his 18-year-old son, Ryan Hinton, who is now deceased. So, what happened? How did Ryan Hinton lose his life so young? And why did his grieving father end up killing an innocent man in a misguided attempt at vengeance? Sadly, the roots of this tragedy stretch back many years. By the end of this video, you will see how almost 2 decades of bad decisions led to this tragic incident. But first, let me walk you through the heartbreaking events that unfolded between April 30th and May 3rd, 2025. According to Chief Teresa Thiege of the Cincinnati Police, the incident leading to the death of Ryan started on April 30th, 2025, after her department received a report of a stolen Kia. In the United States, whenever someone reports their vehicle is stolen, law enforcement enters the vehicle's information into a national database called the National Crime Information Center, NCIC. This real-time data system enables law enforcement agencies across the U.S. to identify stolen vehicles by license plate or vehicle identification number. Law enforcement agencies can also monitor the real-time movement of the stolen vehicle if it has a GPS tracking system installed on it. Luckily for the owner of the stolen Kia, the vehicle had a GPS device, so the police started monitoring its movement. It seems the suspect or suspects were not aware that they were being monitored closely, so they drove the stolen vehicle from Edgewood in Kentucky to Cincinnati in Ohio. That is about 14 to 17 minutes drive, as seen on Google Maps. Before 9:30 a.m. on May 1st, officers of the Cincinnati Police had gotten an approximate location of the stolen Kia. The GPS device showed that the vehicle was parked in the parking lot of an apartment complex on Warsaw Avenue in East Price Hill. So, several officers quickly set out to apprehend the suspect and retrieve the stolen vehicle. However, as the officers got closer in their patrol vehicles, they noticed there were 4 guys sitting in the stolen Kia. One of them later turned out to be 18-year-old Ryan Hinton. Immediately, the 4 guys saw the officers approaching them. They jumped out of the Kia and started running away in different directions. One officer quickly got out of his patrol vehicle and started pursuing one of Ryan's friends. A second officer pursued Ryan, who wasn't running as fast as his friends. At one point, Ryan stumbled and fell near a waste container. By the time he was back on his feet and running again, the second officer was close behind him. That was when tragedy struck. The second officer claimed to have seen a gun in Ryan's hand, so he alerted the first officer since Ryan was running towards him. Immediately, Ryan appeared from behind the waste container. The first officer fired 4 to 5 gunshots at him within 3 seconds. 2 bullets struck Ryan. One hit his chest and exited at the back. The second one struck his hand before hitting his side. One interesting fact about this incident was that it took just 6 seconds from the time the second officer alerted his colleague about Ryan's alleged gun to the time the first officer fired 4 to 5 gunshots at him. Another interesting issue was that the body camera footage was blurry, so it was not very clear if Ryan was indeed holding a gun or if he aimed it at any of the officers. However, this loaded semi-automatic handgun was recovered at the scene after Ryan was shot dead. When the officers searched Ryan's jacket, they found this extra magazine in the pocket. The magazine was fully loaded with these bullets. The officers then searched the stolen vehicle and found another loaded firearm. Interestingly, this second gun was reported stolen from another vehicle in Kentucky just 24 hours earlier. 2 of Ryan's friends, 19-year-old DeAnthony Bullocks and 18-year-old Jarrell Austie, were eventually found and arrested, but the last one managed to escape that day. Although this was already a tragedy for both Ryan's family and all the officers involved, the worst was yet to happen. As expected, Ryan's family was greatly agonized by the sudden and tragic death of their beloved son. They decided to see how the incident unfolded themselves. So, early on the morning of May 2nd, Ryan's father, some members of his family, and their attorneys went to Cincinnati Police Department to watch the body camera footage of the incident. They arrived at the department around 9:33 a.m. with Ryan's father Rodney Hinton Jr. driving his car and parking it in the parking lot of the department. Chief Deej then ushered them into her office where they watched the body camera footage. As they were watching the disturbing videos at 9:51 a.m., Rodney became very upset and walked out of the building. At 10:37 a.m., his family also left the building and joined Rodney. Then they drove Rodney away in a second vehicle they had brought to the place. Rodney's vehicle was left in the parking lot. Rodney was overwhelmed with agonizing emotions. His family brought him food at the Findlay market, but he refused to eat. They then decided to drive him home. Rodney allegedly took a nap for a few minutes. At 12:41 p.m., the family arrived at the Cincinnati Police Building again so that Rodney could retrieve his car. Now, this was where the incident started getting murky. Rodney's family made a terrible decision by allowing him to drive his car even though he was now in a very grievous mood. Their decision would later prove very fatal. At 12:44 p.m., Rodney drove out his car without any incident. However, for reasons best known to him, he drove back into the Cincinnati Police Department 5 minutes later. He drove through the parking lot before finally leaving the place around 12:50 p.m. His family was close to him in a separate vehicle and somehow didn't suspect that Rodney's emotional pains may be pushing him to do something unthinkable. Rodney continued driving his car and drove towards University of Cincinnati. That day, the school was holding its graduation ceremony. Around 1 p.m., Rodney arrived at the intersection of Martin Luther King Drive and Burnett Woods Drive, where Deputy Larry Henderson with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office was controlling traffic for the graduation ceremony. Unfortunately, Rodney's grief eventually got the better of him. Upon seeing the deputy, he allegedly first slowed down before speeding up toward the deputy. Before the deputy could manage to find safety, Rodney had hit him, sending him flying. Rodney also crashed his car and suffered some injuries. Although Deputy Henderson was rushed to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, he had suffered fatal injuries, which resulted in his death that same day. Earlier that day at 9:33 a.m., Rodney had entered the police department on his own accord. By 8 p.m. the same day, he was back with the police, this time in handcuffs. Some people have suggested that Rodney's agony was what pushed him to kill an innocent deputy. However, what Rodney did the following day may change that narrative. On May 3, 2025, Rodney was arraigned before the court on an aggravated murder charge. His attorney argued for a bond based on mental health. The request was denied. While being escorted out of the courtroom, Rodney mouthed a statement toward the standing deputies. Although his voice was not very audible, parts of his statement sounded like "gone forever, forever." Some people have argued that Rodney was mocking the deputy he murdered, while others believed he was only trying to talk to someone behind the glass. Well, I'll leave you to be the judge. As I was reading a lot of the news reports about these series of tragic incidents, I began to realize that the incident did not start on April 30th when the Kia was reported stolen. The lead up to this incident started about 2 decades earlier. I arrived at that conclusion after I started looking at previous criminal records of Rodney, Ryan, and his 3 friends. The more records I found, the more it became clear there'd been problems running back many years. What happened from April 30th to May 2nd, 2025 was just a tragic manifestation of the previous problems. Before I show you what I found during my extensive research, let me first clarify that someone's criminal records you can find online are not usually the full record of the person. Some law enforcement agencies don't publicize certain criminal records online for various reasons, such as court order, privacy, or even lack of adequate resources. With that being said, let me now show you what I found during my research. I started my research with Ryan's father, found out that his full name is Rodney Lee Hinton Jr. and he was born in August 1986. Using that data, I began searching court websites to see his previous records. His first offense I saw was one he committed in February 2007 when he was still 20 years old. He was arrested for pedestrian violation. The charge was later dismissed. Then, in May 2008, Rodney was indicted on 3 charges, including driving without a license, improper lights, and blurred windshield. In December 2011, he was charged with safety restraint violation. Rodney committed many more crimes over the following years. I even saw his mugshots for 2017, 2019, 2021, and 2023. However, one of his mugshots got my attention the most, and that was the one of March 2023. His arrest that year may probably shed more light on his lifestyle and how Rodney may have unintentionally negatively influenced his now deceased son. Around 11:15 p.m. on March 24, 2023, Rodney was arrested in Butler County, Ohio on 3 charges, including 1 count of first-degree felony aggravated robbery and 2 counts of second-degree felony assault. The total bond for those charges was $250,000. So, my question is this: could Rodney have influenced his son based on his criminal record? Well, I won't make any conclusion. You be the judge. Let me know what you think in the comments section. I didn't stop my research with Rodney Hinton Jr. I went further to research about Ryan's 3 friends to see if they too have had any criminal records. By the way, the 3rd suspect that managed to escape on May 1st was eventually found and arrested. So all the 3 friends of Ryan who were arrested are 19-year-old DeAnthony Bullocks, 18-year-old Jarrell Austin, and 18-year-old Sincere Grigsby. I began another research with DeAnthony Bullocks and found out that he was born in January 2006. Using that data, I searched Hamilton County Court website and found some interesting records. On September 30th, 2024, DeAnthony was charged with 2 crimes, including obstructing official business and failure to comply with an order or signal of a police officer. Then, 4 days later, on October 4th, 2024, DeAnthony was charged again with another crime, which was unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. Is anyone seeing a pattern of crime here? I didn't stop my research with DeAnthony. I began another research, this time about 18-year-old Jarrell Austin. I quickly found out Jarrell was born in July 2006. His court record showed that in December 2024, he was charged with 4 crimes, including 1 count of discharge of a firearm on or near prohibited premises and 3 counts of felonious assault. For Sincere Grigsby and the now deceased Ryan Hinton, I couldn't find any prior criminal record. So, that raised the question: why were they hanging out with the other 2 guys in a stolen vehicle with loaded firearms? The death of Ryan was a very tragic case that should not have happened if he'd been very mindful of the company he kept. The death of Deputy Larry Henderson was even more painful, as he was an innocent man who had diligently served his community for 33 years before he retired in late December 2024. So, could we say this tragic incident was a result of bad parenting or negative influence of friends? Or was it caused by something else? Let me know what you think in the comments section below. On May 8th, Rodney Hinton Jr. was indicted for 2 counts of aggravated murder, 1 count of murder, and 2 counts of felonious assault. If he's found guilty of the charges, he faces the death penalty. On May 13th, Rodney pleaded not guilty to his charges and is now receiving mental health treatment while still being held at the Claremont County Jail. On May 9th, the 3 teenage friends of Ryan were each indicted on 7 criminal charges, including 2 counts of obstructing official business, 2 counts of theft, 1 count of receiving stolen property, 1 count of improperly handling firearms in a motor vehicle, and 1 count of having weapons while under disability. The 3 of them were each held on a $50,000 bond. As of recording this video, their court trials are still ongoing. When I get new information about their trials, I'll do my best to update you in the description or pinned comment. So, those are the truths about the tragic case of Rodney Hinton Jr. and his teenage son. What's your opinion about this case? Please share them with us in the comments section below. Also, make sure to like this video and share it with your friends on social media. Thanks for watching.